What's happening, guys? Welcome into another boxing breakdown and prediction show for this weekend's heavyweight rematch between former WBO heavyweight champion Joseph Parker as he takes on Dereck Chisora here for a second time over in England this weekend. So let's get into it. Joseph Parker comes into this one as the minus 275 favourite, with Dereck Chisora coming back at a plus 200. Now, I had a 5% on Joseph Parker in their first fight back in May. I personally think Parker is one of the best heavyweights in the division when he's at his best. Great punch selection, carries power with both hands, can cut off the ring effectively as well. But, while we cashed that ticket on him in the first fight, it was a lot closer than myself and a lot of people probably expected, to be honest. Joseph Parker was a minus 175 favourite heading into that first fight. Now he's a minus 275 favourite. So, this line is a lot closer to where I would have had this fight first time around. Hence the 5% play. But, Joseph Parker is one of the most frustrating characters in all of boxing, to be honest. He has all the weapons to be a serious problem for, against almost anyone in the division right now. But his personality, this nice guy persona he has, he unfortunately carries that into the ring with him. And that's a huge issue when you're looking to back him in these types of fights. I watched reruns of a fight last year involving Orlando Salido. I think it was against Yamaguchi or someone where, Salido went down early in that fight. Camera pans in right to his face. And he had a look on him like, I'm going to absolutely destroy you right now. He was projecting pure venom onto his opponent. And, you could see that ferocity start to show in Salido as he roared back into that fight. Stopped his man late. We talked about Terence Crawford as well a few weeks ago, prior to the Sean Porter fight, where, what makes Crawford so dangerous in there to me is that drive, that relentless aggressiveness where he wants to put it on you. He wants to hurt you. He's not content simply to outbox you in there to a wide points decision win. And, that grit showed in him after Kavaluskas clipped him, for example. So, it's funny because I was watching the first fight between Parker and Chisora, obviously, back in May. And, Chisora comes out after about 10 seconds in the opening round, cuffs Parker around the back of the head with a big loop and right hand, and Parker goes down. And, obviously we had the 5% play in that one. So initially I was like, oh man. But as Joseph Parker's getting off the canvas, and especially, look, he wasn't hurt at all from that shot. It was more of an off-balance punch that caught him around the back of the head. I started to think, wait, this is actually good. This is going to, ignite that fire in Joseph Parker that we all want to see here, force him to make a statement. And, what do we get instead? Joseph Parker kind of gingerly gets off the canvas. He's almost like, oh, good shot, Dereck, thumbs up. He's smiling. It's just so frustrating to watch. So, there was numerous times I felt Parker could have closed the show himself in that fight. I think it was around the 7th round where he had Chisora in all types of trouble up against the ropes. But, again, like so many other fights of his, refused to step on the gas and kind of look for the finish. Someone needs to tell Joseph Parker, it's all right. You can still be a gentleman. You can still be a nice guy outside the ring. Look at Triple G, look at Manny Pacquiao, Nonito Donaire. And so on. But, you can still be an absolute killer once you step through those ropes. No one's saying you have to walk around with a grimace on you like Artur Beterbiev 24/7. You can still keep making your funny lockdown videos. By all means, sign autographs for the kids. But, once that bell rings, the funny stuff needs to stop. This is a big fight for Joseph Parker, in my opinion. Dereck Chisora is the epitome of a tough gatekeeper. To get past him, you need to be elite. Tyson Fury's beat him twice. Dillian White's beat him twice. Although really had to go through some fire in that first fight between them. White's beat him, in that first fight. Alexander Usyk had issues with him as well. Had a much tougher time against Chisora, for instance, than he did against Anthony Joshua. So, Dereck's no pushover by any means. He's a very awkward fighter in there. Loads up on those big cuffing kind of looping shots around the back of the head, as we said, that, take a while to judge distance on. Took Usyk, who's a master boxer, a good few rounds to start reading the lay of the land in that fight. But, that's the danger for Chisora also, in my opinion, that he just gets a little too predictable in there. Tyson Fury had a difficult time with him in their first meeting back in 2011. 3 years later, he stops him. Same with Dillian White, fought an absolute war against Dereck Chisora back in 2016 that, honestly could have went either way. Very, very, very narrow split decision in that one for White. But again, 2 years later, he stops him. So, Dereck Chisora is a fighter with one fundamental game plan in there. He wants to put it on you from the opening bell. He's awkward, he's messy, he looks to take you to the trenches, but, it's also effective. It's why he keeps getting these big fights. But the issue for him, however, is that it's all, as we said, it also gets predictable in there. All three of the previous fighters I just mentioned who fought Chisora either completely dominated the second fight or the second half of the fight in Usyk's case. So, if Joseph Parker can't win this one second time around in style on Saturday, we might well have to put a fork in him as a legitimate contender in the heavyweight division. It's not only Joseph Parker in this one as well that's on the line. This is a huge fight for his trainer, Andy Lee, as well. Lee's one of the best commentators in boxing right now. He does a fantastic job on breaking down fights over on DAZN. Very shrewd, very articulate on there. Understands boxing like few other people do. But again, Parker really struggled in the first meeting against Chisora. We saw Jason Quigley get dropped multiple times and stopped in the second round against Demetrius Andrade a couple of weeks ago as well. Paddy Donovan has looked sensational right now, but who's he beat? So really, really big weekend, not just for the fighter here, but also for the trainer as well. As while we can let Andy Lee off the hook a little bit with the Quigley fight, Andrade, one of the top operators at middleweight, obviously. We can give him a pass also with the first Joseph Parker fight. They hadn't been together that long, in fairness. A few weeks of training. Even in the recent documentary on DAZN, Andy Lee was saying how Joseph Parker consistently was slipping into old habits under him during those first few weeks together. So, possibly understandable. There was some teething problems in that first fight, but, there won't be any excuses to fall on this time around. They've had almost a full year together now. Not only that, but you're up against a guy in Dereck Chisora who literally tells you how he's going to fight. He only knows one way in there. So if Joseph Parker struggles for a second time here on Saturday night, it won't be just him under the bus here that you might have to put a fork in, but serious questions probably need to be raised about Andy Lee as a trainer as well. However, look, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I do think Andy Lee's one of the best minds in boxing, so I expect that jab to start popping from the opening bell for Joseph Parker here. Expect him to break down Dereck Chisora from the outside, get busier in there. And look, I felt personally Usyk could have stopped Dereck Chisora if he had wanted to, if he had stepped on the gas in their fight. Conspiracy theory possibly, but maybe he was trying to lure Anthony Joshua into that big fight down the road. But whether that was the case or not, the fact is Dereck Chisora fades badly in fights. You really only fight Dereck Chisora for 6 rounds in a fight. The final 6 are against a heavy bag with breathing difficulties. So I'm going to tentatively say Joseph Parker gets the stoppage here on Saturday night. And moves himself into a mandatory position for next year. Joseph Parker to win in round 7 to 12 is going off at a plus 275. I like that price. The lack of finishing instinct is a concern for me here, obviously, especially when looking, to back Parker to get any type of finishing fights. But, Chisora is almost 38 years old. The way he fades down the stretch in fights as well. The fact Joseph Parker needs to make a statement here, and the fact he's been with Andy Lee for a full camp now, I think all of those add up here to a late stoppage win for Parker on Saturday. So, go late, not a major play by any means, but I do like the plus 275 on offer for Joseph Parker to get the stoppage late in round 7 to 12 this weekend over in Manchester. That'll wrap things up this week. As always, leave us your thoughts in the comments section below. You can also catch me over on Twitter at TheSportsWolf83 and at my handicapper page, Kevin Dolan, over at WagerTalk. As always, thanks for listening. Till next time, Slán Bhaile.